What is a personal story you have that you don't tell because it sounds made up? Story 1. Not nearly as exciting as some of these stories, but in college I was walking through downtown. It was not a good area to be in by any means. There were 4 stabbings and 2 murders there my first semester at that college, and I was a 17-year-old girl alone in the city, and this dude called me from an alleyway. He goes, "Hey, kid, you like Dalmatians, like the movie?" And I, being the genius that I was, responded, "Yay, like in a fire truck." So this guy says to follow him down this alley to his truck because he has puppies, and of course I follow him. They're puppies, and this would be way too cliche to actually be, so dude luring young co-eds to their death. And I kid you not, he had like 8 pups and their mother in the back of this rusted junker between these buildings, and let me play with them for like 10 minutes before I walked back to my dorms. He wanted me take one, but our dormitory just got busted for hiding squirrels and cats inside the week before. So anyways, that's the story of how I followed a stranger down an alley because he told me he had puppies, and he actually had puppies. Reply. With the right delivery, that would be a brilliant piece of stand-up. Reply 2. I got into a car accident in university. A guy hit me and then I spun and hit another car. The guy in the car I hit found me on Facebook and we met for coffee a few days later, around 8 p.m. He asked if I wanted to see the horses he worked with to cheer me up. So I got in his car and we started driving out of the city. Halfway in the middle of nowhere, I realized I hadn't told anyone that I was meeting this guy, and he could very well be preparing to rape and murder me and dump me in the woods. My phone was broken in the crash and I hadn't gotten a new one yet since I was waiting for the insurance payout. But he didn't, and I got to play with the horses, plus the kitties and puppies that lived in the horse barn. Story 2. Not me, but my dad lived a wild and unbelievable life. He was a world-wandering vagabond who joined the Navy at 16 by giving his older brothers information. Back in the 1960s, my dad was in a plane crash, small plane, and it went down in the desert near Mexico. They didn't know what to do. So they split up, 2 went in one direction, 1 went another, and my dad went his own way. They thought one of them would run into help that way. My dad ended up somewhere in Mexico and never went back. He just hung around, and traveled all over Central and South America. After almost a year, he decided it was time to go back home. But he ran out of cash or had no cash. So he sold his watch for a motorcycle. Used that to get to Mexico. Then, he traded that motorcycle for a car. My dad was a mechanic. He could make any POS with an engine run for a bit, at least. Then drove north toward the US. He had no documentation. So he sold the car, walked through a ravine, ditch back into the US. When he actually made it to his brother's place through a combination of walking and hitchhiking, his brother and one of the guys from the plane crash were sitting on the porch drinking beers. They thought my dad had died. My dad thought the other guy died. They drank beers, played cards, and shot the shit. Years later, before I was born, my dad told my mom he was going to get the watch back. He drove from Chicago to Mexico. Took a bus to some place in Chiapas, IRC. Found the guy he sold the watch to, bought it back, and then drove all the way back to Chicago. I have the watch. We have pictures of my dad as a young man living it up in Mexico, India, Germany, UK, the Philippines, Hawaii, all over the US. Postcards he wrote to his brother and so on. Places that don't even exist anymore. My dad died when I was 16 years old. Edit. I got a lot of messages about my dad from folks. He was indeed a cool dad, and I loved him a lot. Thank you for the kind words about him. Reply. Your dad was an OG. Can you imagine? Did your mom remarry? OP reply. No, my mother is gay. She and my dad had more of a friendship, loving relationship. My dad knew my mom was gay. They discussed it. Back then, my mother couldn't be out of the closet but wanted a child. My dad obliged, if you follow, and married my mom so we would have something when he passed. They lived together till he died but were not lovers. They just loved each other and me. I was born in the 1970s. Different times, my brother. Reply 2. Your whole family needs a movie. Story 3. I went to a July 4th party at Mark Zuckerberg's house once and he grilled me a burger. Reply. Nothing like a classic Zuckerberger. Story 4. We were cruising around Huntington Beach in my friend's Mercury Comet back in the late 80s. Racing people randomly and generally being obnoxious. We are at red light and next to us is a little old lady in her nondescript Audi. My buddy guns the engine a few times as we hoot and holler at her. She turns her head slowly, and with a wry smile puts her hand wheel. She is wearing those leather driving gloves, the ones with all the holes on the fingers. Light turns green and she absolutely smoked us. We were stunned and just watched her speed off. The story sounds like a scene from some 80s John Hughes movie. But it happened. Reply. In high school, at the height of the Super Soaker craze, my buddy and I were driving around our small town looking for people we knew so we could do a water gun drive-by on them. At a red light, we stopped next to a senior couple in a big old Buick or something. Sitting in the passenger seat, I pointed my water gun at them playfully, and they acted scared. We all laughed. As I turned to tell my buddy, the driver, what just happened, I caught a spray of water on the side of my face. The old couple had a loaded Super Soaker too. And then they peeled out, leaving us in the dust and my face dripping. Story 5. Last summer, while swimming at a busy beach, I got caught in a rip current and had to be rescued by a lifeguard. Before I was rescued, a crowd gathered. When I finally got pulled out, exhausted, disheveled, covered in seaweed, dizzy, disoriented, tits spilling out of my bathing suit, etc., everyone started to clap. Most humiliating moment of my life but also my only literal, and then everyone clapped, story. Reply. Glad you made it. For anyone ready, if you get caught by a rip tide, swim parallel with the beach until you are out of it, then swim to shore. Story 6. My grandfather named Burger King's Whopper. He was friends with several of the founders of Burger King and they used to get together and hang out and play poker. They were chatting one night and trying to come up with the name for one of Burger King's upcoming burgers, and my grandfather suggested the name, the Whopper. It was probably one of many suggestions and nothing came of it at the time. He was offered a position at the company, but turned it down and decided to open up a Burger Castle restaurant instead. Not too long after, Burger King announced their new burger and it was named the Whopper. My family could be heirs to a Burger King fortune, but my grandfather was always stubborn and wanted to do his own thing. Story 7. I got very sick when I was in middle school. Like seriously sick. I wasn't even able to walk. I used to crawl to bathroom, standing up straight used to make everything look inverted. I was also getting weird rashes on my body. I also had very severely headaches, non-stop for months. We went to many doctors, but nothing worked. Painkillers did nothing, doctors couldn't diagnose the disease. Then one day, I woke up and it was gone. Months of pain gone in an instant. Reply. House MD shit. Story 8. I was held at gunpoint in Oakland. I accidentally made a joke to the robber. He laughed so hard he let us go. Reply. I was living in Winnipeg, pretty rough town, by Canadian standards, and I had a genuine Crocodile Dundee moment. Dude pulled a knife on me, I pulled mine. Mine was bigger, so buddy took off. I tell the story occasionally, but I don't know if anyone believes me or not. Story 9. You just reminded me of the time my husband was a hostage at a bar. One of the regulars came in, drank a beer with everyone and then pulled out a gun. He said his wife was screwing his best friend and he'd had enough. He didn't want to live anymore and he hated his wife and wanted her to suffer too. So, he said, anyone who wants to get out, go after we have a drink. He poured a few shots for all of them. Then, knowing that the cops had been called, he fired a couple of shots into the ceiling. All the guys including my husband said, man, don't do this, but he hustled them out the back. Then he kicked the front door of the bar open and started firing into the ground while running for his car. He got shot 17 times and died instantly. But he was nice enough to tell all the guys goodbye, and he'd put his wallet on the bar to pay for all of their drinks. I guess he wanted to apologize. I know because I called my husband and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he said, "Oh hey, I'm a hostage." Hey, stop. Be safe out there. Subscribe for more. Yo.